Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. And you know what? I get to interview great guests, but not all of them have overcome the challenges that the guest today on the program has done and has succeeded exceptionally well. In fact, is now a national recognized champion in this. So our guest today is Miss Wheelchair Kansas, now Miss Wheelchair USA, and her name is Tamara. And Tamara, thanks for joining us today and being on our program. Thanks for being a part of what we do. Tamara Blackwell competed in Kansas and won Miss Kansas, now is Miss USA, and not only has overcome challenges, but has done some fantastic things in the meantime. So Tamara, welcome to our program.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time and your dedication to all that you do, but also for just thinking so much to have me on your show today.
Well, when I started looking at what you have done and how you've gone about doing it, you do it with such a great attitude. And tell me a little bit about your wheelchair experience, because many people out there see people in wheelchairs and they don't quite understand the experience there. Forget the whole
Right.
thing about being Miss Wheelchair Kansas, Miss Wheelchair USA, or Miss Wheelchair America, et cetera. How does that fit in with just being in a wheelchair? What have you learned?
Wow, life is different down here. And why I say down here
Understand
is
that.
because standing up, I'm 5'4", almost 5'5". And so it's different. And so you see the world differently. I tell people to look at it as if you were childproofing your home or puppy proofing things. And they, experts say, get down on that level and walk the floor and crawl the floor, and you'll see things that need to be changed. You see those safety issues. And being down on this level, I see things that I have not seen when I was completely, I guess, able-bodied. It's a lot different, and I see the need for change. My experience has been one that kind of shook me almost, because I really struggled with trying to figure out, like, well, how am I supposed to do life when everything in this life is not meant for me to do life? And so those challenges only like strengthened my, resolve to say, like, I've got to do something. It's bigger than just sitting in the diagnosis. So that's what it was for me, and it's a struggle still, but it gives me new perspective for not just people in wheelchairs, but just people in general, because you never know what someone else's, life will have them having to adapt to, and the challenges they have to go through. And it gives you, I think, a better sense of empathy and sympathy for others.
Well, one thing I know, in having experience with my son who's in a power wheelchair, you see people tend to look at you differently. And when you're in a wheelchair, have you experienced that, and how have you overcome that?
Yes. So because I have muscular dystrophy, it progressed. And so growing up, I was always low vision, visually impaired. But it's not outright like you can see the disability unless you see me try to read something and then you're like, hey, why is the book so close to your face? So then I can tell you, like, oh, I probably should wear glasses or something like that. But this is completely different. And there are some people that treat you like everybody else. There are some people who treat you like, woe is me, like your life is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're going through that. I couldn't do this. And they kind of put this doomsday thing on it. And then there are some people who steer clear of you because they don't know how to interact with you. And a lot of it was very unnerving at first, because I felt like an exhibit, because I'm usually so I'm the only girl or the only person in this, in this environment. Everybody's able-bodied. And so you see people staring at you, they hurry up and try to look away, or they hurry up trying to pull their kid back because their kids are like, mommy, what's that? And they want to touch the chair and all of that stuff. And it was hard, because I literally would say, like, why are these people staring at me? Like, they went to the zoo and they're looking at the latest exhibit. That was very tough.
Well, you've done a magnificent job. Tell me about the Miss Kansas pageant and the Miss America pageant. It's certainly not something where they're asking you to leap tall curbs with a single bound, because that's one of the things. Wheelchairs, when you're in a wheelchair, you always look at people say, yeah, it's wheelchair accessible. Well, if it has a curb, it's not wheelchair accessible.
Right.
And so what do they have you do in Miss Wheelchair Kansas? Then we'll talk about Miss Wheelchair America.
Okay, so as far as the competition,
Yeah.
yeah, so and any woman who is wheelchair mobile and any girl, and then next year we're going to have three title holders. So we'll have the little miss, a junior miss, and then the adult miss. And if you're wheelchair mobile 100% out of the time out of the home, so in the home you don't have to be 100% because there are those of us that can still stand and transfer and stuff like that. And then you go to Lawrence and you go through this whole weekend of amazingness because you meet other people in your same or similar situation and condition, and you can connect on that level. But in between all of that is a competition. So you meet with the judges, they ask you a bunch of different questions. You have to have a platform developed and you have to write a speech and you deliver your speech, and they give you two questions on stage, and then the judges confer and they're like, and then they pick someone. And so they picked me for the winner.
It sounds pretty exciting. In fact, you have a cool speech. Tell me about your speech.
Yeah, so my platform starts with a question that I found myself asking over and over again, am I going to fit? And then my platform is basically me sharing that experience. And so it goes on to say navigating accessibility through personal experience. So I share my personal experiences of living this life every day. It was things that I was already doing when I kind of caught a hold of the TikTok bug, like a lot of us did during the pandemic, and jumped on social media. And I really felt like God was leading me to share not only my faith, but share my story by allowing people to see that behind the scenes. This is how I get in my wheelchair. This is how I get out of the wheelchair. This is how I feel today, and I can't get out of bed. And so, yeah, so that's where that, speech, and I talk about in the speech how I try to shed light on the complexities of accessibility, because like you said, if it's a curve, then it's not accessible. And we're missing the mark in society so much when it comes to that. But I think people just think that if I can check the box because there is a curb check, there's that area that you can get up on, and there are a couple of spots out here that has the little blue sign, and then that's enough, and it's really not enough.
Well, you see that when you're around it and you understand it.
Right.
There's everything. You see everything from, I'll say, disability handicapped stalls, where people who are really not handicapped use those stalls when people that really need them, because they're close to the wheelchair ramps, and that's what they're done for or used for. And so you see those things when you have someone in your life that does that. You won the Miss Wheelchair Kansas. You then went on to Michigan, which is no small, I mean, Michigan's a ways away. What happened in Michigan?
So we drove the 12 hours. If anyone is familiar with wheelchairs, especially power wheelchairs, and I just happened to get a new chair days before I was set to go to Michigan, and we did not take who I call Princess Penelope as my new chair. We did not take her with us because we haven't adapted the car for it. But I still have a travel chair that I use, like if my husband and I want to go out, or if I just want to go shopping or something, and I still don't feel comfortable putting that on the airplane. And so my husband said I'd rather drive. And as a matter of fact, one of the contestants, her chair was damaged in transit. And so we dodged that bullet, but we had to, sacrifice 12 hours. It ended up being 14 because as soon as we hit Indiana, I don't know what they had going on. I don't know if the Colts were playing, but it was like gridlock traffic. And we finally got there, and we check in. We had to put our display boards up, all 22 of us. We had to have boards that kind of displayed what we had going on. have been having going on, because I just won my title this year. Some women won their titles last year for their state, but I was crowned March 24th of this year. And so we put those things together, and we have a fun day the next day. We do orientation, but then Wednesday was when the judges came in, the panel, and we had to meet with them 10 minutes a piece. And then the next day was another 15 minutes with the judges. That Friday was the speech night, and we all had to deliver our platform speeches under 2 minutes, but over a minute and 30. So just imagine. And then I'm visually impaired, and so they have these things that they're holding up. And so right there, I had to adapt something. I called my coordinator over. Well, she already knew. She was like, Tamara, you're not going to be able to see this. Like, no, or unless they're really giant, like signals, I'm not going to be able to see that. And so we kind of adapted in that moment to allow my spouse to stand behind me. And I told him, do not touch me until they put up that 2 minute mark, because we could go 2:15 without being deducted. But then when he touched me, I was like, okay, you got to wrap it up. But they judged our speeches, our in-person interviews, and then they judged our application. And then there was a blind essay that we all had to write on a certain topic. And we couldn't put any identifying markers in there because they didn't want there to be a bias. And so I can't recall the exact question they asked us, but I do think it was somewhere along the lines of, what do you think the biggest challenge in the disability community is? And so I can't even recall what I wrote about, but I know I touched on several different things, and accessibility was one of those. Even web accessibility, medical accessibility, getting medical care, and the prior authorization that we have to go through over and over again with the wheelchair process, or getting the chair fixed and jumping through hurdles, And so, yeah, so at the end of all of that, that Saturday, the judges picked their top 5. So it was based off of all of that, the 5 criteria that I said, the essay, application, interviews, and then the speech. And they said, we're going to call the 5 finalists in no particular order. And we're all holding hands. And I'm thinking like, okay, we're good. No need to be nervous, because, there's 21 other people that are capable of doing this. And then they go, Miss Wheelchair Kansas. Like, are you kidding me? So then my brain is like, what are they going to ask me? But I really have faith in God. And I told him, I said, God, if this is not meant for me, I'm not going to try to pray for it and say, God, I want to win this. I said, I want this to be your will, because if it's your perfect will, then everything will line up and everything will work out for me. And so we all 5 had to answer 2 on-stage questions, a serious question and a fun. And then they take those scores back, and drum roll, and they go through the runner-up, and it's me and Miss Michigan sitting there holding hands. And the host goes, I want to make sure that the runner-up gets their time to shine, because usually when we say the runner-up's name, they push that person out of the way and they shine the spotlight on the winner. Well, I'm holding her hand, and they announce Miss Michigan as the runner-up. And I'm sitting there like, yeah. And then she goes, you won. And I was like, are you serious? Like, get out of here. Like, what? And that's when it really hit me. And then I like kind of just lost it.
Well, you deserve, you deserve so much for going through the whole process and making this happen, and in a sense, being such an advocate for those. Were you impressed with the other ladies who were competing for this?
Yes, we had a class of 25, but we only had 22 that were able to be in person to compete. And everyone, even in the judges panel, I think they asked all of us, but they asked me, why should you win? Well, I told them, of course, I am so awesome. Why not? But then I told them, I said, anybody here is so deserving of this title, because they're doing the work. They're not just wearing a crown and sash and saying that I have a title. They're actually getting out there. They're doing events. They're meeting with the politicians. They're meeting with local officials and business owners, and they're trying to affect change, tangible change, things that we're not looking 5 or 10 years down the road to get done, but things that we can change now. Simple things like adding buttons to press so that the door can open for not just us, but everybody, because how convenient is that button for anybody, and just being aware, Miss Michigan talked about going into one of a local restaurant. It's a chain restaurant. I won't name it, but she wanted to sit outside and she couldn't because all of the tables were really high pub style tables. And so she just, politely asked to speak with the manager, and she told them, like, I would love to sit outside. And she did say, I am Miss Wheelchair Michigan and I would love to sit outside. And they had to do was take some chairs and table outside. And then they had a table and chair setting for an individual who is in a chair, or anybody who doesn't want to sit so high up, because I even heard of someone just falling out of one of those chairs and injuring themselves pretty bad, and they're not even a disabled person. And so it's just little things like that that society can, we can wrap our minds around. And I think if we can get the little things done, then I think it'll open the minds of the rest of the world, those that are able-bodied or even the disabled community, to say, okay, we can make this change and that change, and it will still benefit everyone.
You had a chance to meet with Governor Kelly earlier this year, and she had some really nice comments to say about her. But one of those quotes is, "Your work will help empower those with disabilities in Kansas." And now she'll be able to do that on the national level, which is inspiring. I know when you met with her, she had some really nice things to say about you. Was that a fun meeting?
Yes, and it's not even for myself, but this was the first time that a little miss was ever at the Capitol, the state Capitol. She knew of the program, the organization, the Miss Wheelchair Kansas organization, and she's met past title holders, but she's never been able to meet a little miss. And so it meant the world to me. I have a little miss. Her name is Josie Metzinger, and she's the most awesomest little girl ever. And I love her so much. And when I secured the meeting, she was not initially on that, and it just dawned on me, like, let's see if Josie can come. And I sent her mom a message. I said, I know she's going to be in school, but can she come? And she said she could miss a day for that. And it was at the end of the school year anyway. So what are they really doing? And so I was just so happy to see her in that moment, to be the first Little Miss Wheelchair there. And then we toured the Capitol, and we both got challenge coins from the governor. And it was just a really awesome day.
Well, I'm going to take a quick break here, Tamara. We're going to come back and talk about what you do in real life. Other
Okay.
being a superstar Miss Wheelchair America, you also are a mom of three, have a real life outside of that. Want to talk about that, and then where people can go to find out more about you. Our guest is Tamara Blackwell, and she is not only Miss Wheelchair Kansas, but just recently crowned Miss Wheelchair America. Back with more after this.
Since 1776, the United States of America continues to stand tall. It's been tested before, many times. Through grit and the ability to move forward, we create better tomorrows. We help our clients live their best lives to and through retirement. We make it easier. Thank you, Kansas. Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Welcome back to Forward Ever, leading in challenging times, an inspiring story that we've been talking with Tamara Blackwell, who's just been crowned Miss Wheelchair America. And she's not only on the podcast with us here, you can not only listen in on our post sites, but here on our radio station. But she's inspiring. But also, not only does she have these honors, but she's a mom of three and lives in, I believe, Wichita. Tell us about your real life.
Okay. Well, in real life, I am a wife. I've been married for 22 years. My husband and I married straight out of high school, and we have 3 children together. Our oldest is Jonathan Jr. He's 22. And then our daughter, Jaylan, she's 19, and her and my husband are my rock when it comes to doing all of this, because they are the ones getting me in and out of the gowns and getting me to where I need to be. And then our youngest just turned 18. His name is Jeremiah. He just graduated this year and turned 18. And so they're all adults, but they still all stay home with us. And then in the midst of that, we have 3 little dogs, Winston, Hamilton, and Duke. And they are my fur babies, and they keep me very, very busy. But also, My house is busy because I have an in-home daycare and I've had it for 14 years. When my disease progressed, I could no longer be the person to hold the license for KDHE, and my family stepped in. There was no way they were going to let me after, years of having this dream career of being my own boss and loving to work with children, and then it all has to go away. And so we were able to kind of do some things to where we can keep it in home, and my daughter stepped in, and so Miss Jaylan just does everything. Mommy's here, but but if you need me, I do the back paperwork stuff, making sure we're in compliance and stuff like that, but she does everything. And so my children mean everything to me. So, and then I was also just named the first lady. Unfortunately, my pastor of over 20 plus years passed away, and my husband was the assistant pastor. He was named the assistant pastor at the end of last year. My pastor passed away May 26th of this year, and then my husband became the interim pastor July 14th, which makes me the first lady. So it was like, okay, God, wow. And in the midst of all of that, and then I had to go to Michigan a month later, and then I win the title. So life is very busy, but I enjoy it so much.
So next year, you have a year with a spotlight on you, a
Mhm.
year to really, I just saw a note here on the number of people who are in wheelchairs. 64 million Americans at least have disabilities, and
Right.
you're really able to help be a torchbearer for them, being able to advocate for them and do that. You have a year to do that. What's going to fill up your next year as far as being Miss Wheelchair America?
Well, I am going to try to be not only a vocal advocate, but I really think it's important for me to be visible. So even on this weekend, we have some different things going on in town. I live in Bel Air, but Wichita, we're right on the line. And so Bel Air has an event this weekend. It's like a fun city event. And so I plan on showing up there to kind of meet and greet with the people. And then there's a car show over in Wichita that Josie, my little miss, is going to be at, and it's for the Wichita Adaptive Sports Program. And so I'll be over there as well. And I hope to be at the Kansas State Fair on next week. But outside of Kansas, there are going to be different things. I plan to participate on the roll. In the roll on Capitol Hill, which will be next summer. It'll be in Washington, D.C. It's where a bunch of us that are in wheelchairs, we get together and we go and we meet our representatives, and we are able to speak with them and try to get change, or try to get their ear to hear, this is what we need to do for this community. And then there's some expos that I'll show up at, but I'm hoping to be at a lot of different events that you think that I should be at, and then some that you're like, wow, that's Miss Wiltshire, Kansas. So yeah.
Well, I bet your talk that you give, your speech that you give about what that means in your life experience there anybody could hear that, and it would be terrific. So, two more questions. The first one is: do you always get to wear the banner around now that you're Miss Wheelchair America? Do you just wear that everywhere you go?
Um, so whenever I'm doing official business, I have to have the crown and the sash on. And I no longer can wear the Miss Wheelchair crown and sash because this supersedes it. And so it kind of made me sad. I like my state crown and sash. But yes, when I am out in public and I'm doing official business, but sometimes even if it's not official, I can go to the mall in this, and sometimes this will light up some little person's world because they met a princess, and but it offers a chance for dialogue between myself and that child, or myself and the family that they're with. And a lot of times you find out you have a lot in common, and then they want to find out how they can get involved. So yeah, you'll see me out with it.
All right. Well, I hope to be able to do that sometime. Tamara, you have a Facebook page. Where do they go to find out about you and learn a little bit more?
So on Facebook, it is literally just Miss Wheelchair America 2025, and then my name, Tamara Blackwell. And then you'll see my picture on there, and that's where I update everything. So after this, I'll probably go on and say, hey, I was on this show, so you guys can just follow the whole journey, and you can find out about events that I'll be at, or events I'll be hosting myself. So that's where all the info is at.
Well, I love it. And you've inspired me today. And I know you're inspiring others every day with what you do. Thanks for taking the time to be on Forward Ever.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Our guest today, Tamara Blackwell, who is now not only was Miss Kansas, Miss Wheelchair Kansas, but is now Miss Wheelchair America, our guest, and just a delightful person. Check her out and go to Facebook under Miss Wheelchair America 2025. Thanks for joining us here on Forward Ever. Our program is brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.